Hi all, can everyone see my screen? Just put your hands up if you can see my screen. Okay, all right. Okay, so it looks like it's coming through. All right, thanks guys, I'm just putting your hands down. And okay, so yesterday we finished off on a couple of points on a couple of bits and pieces that we were looking at, specifically on currency, and then I believe we had some internet problems when we tried to do tax condition setup. So let's just go back through that, and we'll quickly go and sort that out. Okay, so tax condition setup over here, as I was, to just explain again, this is where if you want to really start to go set up your very complex tax, your tax setups over here. So for instance, these are things such as you can attach it to a subsidiary, you can attach it to a specific business partner type, a specific customer, specific vendor, vendor group, whatever it might be. Okay. Luis, can everybody hear me okay? Hands up if you can hear me okay, because it sounds like some people have got problems with their audio again. Okay, I'm getting a couple of people. Yeah, it looks like the audio is coming through fine. Louise, if there's a problem with the audio, I'm very sorry, but it does seem that this is in some areas in Africa. It doesn't seem to come through well. If you can possibly do a mobile network or a 4G or whatever it might be network, that might help, at least for the moment. Okay, all right. Okay, it's gonna, guys. The audio is gonna happen sometimes. Unfortunately, that's just it's the how shall I say, the nature of the beast. So over here, you can go set your business partner type, specific customer, customer group, vendor, vendor group. You can set your specific product type or product class or product group. Then you can set your warehouse type. Is it a warehouse or a store group? Then your specific warehouse. Then is there a minimum price, maximum price? And then is there a specific ship to state or city that you're looking at? Then beyond that, you can even set down to your individual attributes. Attributes in iVend being color and size, which we will come to a bit later. Attributes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3 over there. Extra user-defined fields. So, for instance, a specific country of origin if you wanted to go down there. And even from dates, to dates, and even specific times that will eventually resolve to your specific tax code. So in iVend, we really have a complete set of being able to go and do a tax code resolution to actually get you to a specific tax code. I do remember I did have the question about double taxes. We're going to come to that specific answer on that a little bit later. But for the moment, this is just to go and resolve your specific tax that you have over here in this condition. Okay, that more or less covers the tax condition setup. Yes, guys, remember that if you have a question, please ask it. If you do have a question from yesterday or even the day before, please ask that as well in the chat. I really don't mind. It lets me know that you're still there and I haven't been randomly disconnected like I got yesterday for some reason. Don't know why, but stop. Anyway, so with that, let's go and move on to the one thing I said we'd come back to today because we've just run out of time, and that is payment types. Now, payment types, you can have as many different payment types. Okay, there's no limit. As you can see, I've got 15 over here, whereas, well, I've actually got 16 if you consider I start counting at 0. Whereas if I was to go to payments over here, you'll see that it only goes up to, as soon as it decides to wake. And all right, here you go. You'll see that I've only got 12 listed over here. And the first question of the day is in. The site keeps saying page not found for the iVend demo stack installation. Okay, just download the iVend demo stack. It'll have the installation instructions with it. We'll maybe have a look at that a bit later, Vanessa. Okay, so over here, this is cash on account card, all the rest of it. You can go see, you can see the ones here, but you can also see that over here I have got extras. These ones, yes, Vanessa, we can have a word on Skype. You'll go and you'll see that I have a couple of extras over here. And you can go set up, like I said, multiple different types. So for the first one, I'm just going to go new, and then we'll have a look at some of the peculiarities over here, and then we'll look at one of the other ones. Now, obviously, you need to assign it to a specific subsidiary. So different subsidiaries can have different payment types, which also means that if you're integrating through to a different ERP, you can have different you can go and have different payment types linked to different cash accounts, linked to different payment types, and so you can have them linked to different accounts. That just helps going and getting your subsidiaries all sorted out on your accounting side. But you'll see if I do the drop down, I start off with cash. I can then do things like check, credit card, debit card, EBT. EBT is electronic benefit transfer. All right, it's only really it's only relevant in the US. It's not relevant pretty much anywhere else. Effectively, it's their social payments that they get out there. Gift certificates, store credit, loyalty, foreign accounts, on accounts, travelers checks, vouchers. Yeah, most of the things that are most of the things you might want. And you see that as I go and I select different things, it goes and it turns on, it activates and deactivates certain payment types here. Now that I've shown, let's actually have a look at the cash one, which I've set up at the moment. And you'll always have a default. What will happen is when iVend is loaded up by default, it always goes and creates a payment type cash. That's just the way it is. It's just easier. It's easiest that way. Pretty much everyone uses cash. I have dealt with one or two stores that are highly specialized where they don't actually use cash. They will use like loyalty points, or I believe they were actually exclusively credit cards. Believe it or not, at one point, credit cards or loyalty. Generally, it's going to be like a loyalty system or something like that, where it's a specific payment type of that nature. But 999 times out of 1,000, it's always been cash. So there we go. Currency. Your currency for cash is always going to be your native currency type. So this is going to be this will be the base currency as we discussed yesterday. That is the currency. So I'm using dollars. So you'll see over there it says base currency. Base currency is always the cash currency, which makes sense because it's cash. We can do foreign currencies. We'll have a look at one of those in a minute. Is it counted? Okay. Is it counted? Yes or no? If it is counted, then it means that yes, you actually need to count up the money when you're closing the till at the end of the day. If it's not counted, you don't need to do that. And then what sort of count are you doing? Remember yesterday we talked about, actually, if I go back to currency, we talked about the details you could add over here if you wanted to. Well, that's what affects this, this selection over here. Do you do a summary count or do you do a detailed count? The summary count means you count everything up and say, I've got $531.21. Whereas if you do a detailed count, it will go say, okay, I've got so many $100, so many $50. Okay, China asks, in Cambodia, there are two operating currencies operating, the riel and the US dollar. Is it possible to show both currency on the screen and the bill? Not really. Okay, there are different places we can go show it, specifically when you're actually going to go pay something, but you won't necessarily have a USD price and a riel price on the, if I go across over here and I have a look at, cancel. If I go across over here, I wouldn't have like a USD price and a real price. You can achieve that with iVend extensibility, where you can have another column added in and you can have the two prices. Then you can do that. But as a default in the system, we wouldn't necessarily be able to do that. You might want to have a word with Frank in your area. He should be able to go help you on that. Okay. All right, so back here. Display order. Now, this starts off as 0. Okay. You'll see over here it lists 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 15. When you're going and you're creating a new one, you'll go and you'll set the display order so it sets into the right place. Okay, there we go. And then I also have, can we do multi-currency processing? Yes, William, William, we are fully multi-currency. We'll come to a multi-currency one in a minute. I can show you exactly how it works. Okay, the display order, so that's, like I said, you can go set where exactly in the display order you want it to display. Oh, sorry guys, I escaped too quickly. Okay, back to in here. Is it active? Yeah, I've had a couple of cases where there are currencies that get revalued or reissued, mostly in Zimbabwe, right there, where, yes, the old Zimbabwe dollar notes are now deactivated, and now there were USD notes, and then it now changed across to something else that is also rapidly degrading. So I'd expect that they're going to be back in USD in fairly short order. Yeah. After that, what is the default amount? What is the minimum amount? What is the max amount? Has it been authorized, or does it need to be authorized? So it doesn't need that. Okay, Almond, we'll chat in a minute. So when it says authorized, does it need to be authorized by a payment processor? So specifically on the credit cards, you'll see that. Use test payment processor. Guys, please be aware that with the test payment processor, that is specifically to go and actually say that's specifically for when you're testing, so you're not putting through actual payments. Please rather go and actually make sure that the test payment that this is checked when you're doing your testing, and then unchecked when you do your actual payment processing. Can you refund this payment type? Yes, there are certain payment types that are not refundable. Some places I know of, for instance, you can spend loyalty points, but you can't refund loyalty points. Same thing with gift cards. You can spend the value of a gift card. You can't refund the value of a gift card. Does it require the signature or not? Yes or no? Is there, well, if that's the case, if it's yes, then you can just have a signature line on your receipt printout. Print payment receipt. This is if you have a separate payment receipt that prints out at the end of a transaction. This does typically, you won't really use this. This is typically used with the typically used with credit card payment processors, but most payment processors have their own receipt that they send through, and we automatically process and print out. So that's not really a problem. Beyond that, there is the payment receipt format. So what sort of payment receipt format are you looking at? This is only relevant if you've checked that. If you're not doing that, then don't worry. You don't need to look at that. So payment print receipt count. So when you're receipting, so how many times must it print out this receipt? Yeah, that's typically handled by your payment gateways anyway. Open the cash drawer. For cash, yeah, you probably want to do that. Depending on your rules, you might want to do it for your expended gift cards or coupons or something like that. You might want to open it and put the signed coupon into there. Otherwise, yeah, no. Otherwise, no. You generally don't want to go and you generally don't want to open a cash drawer, specifically because the second a cash drawer is open, somebody's going to do something to go for the cash. Rounding. So what sort of rounding are we looking for? Is it going to be round to 500, 1000th? And what we mean by 500th over here is round to 5 cents, round to 10 cents, round to to about 10 cents. Okay. round to 1, round to 50, round to 100, round to 1,000. Obviously, you can see with that is that, say out here in South Africa, we round to 10. We don't really do 5 cents anymore. We used to. But in some other places, yeah, sorry to pick on Zimbabwe again, but yeah, they were rounding to 1,000 at not that long ago. Is it integrated with the ERP or not? Armand, you've just sent me through a batch of Ks again on the chat, on the question. Can you just, if you do have a question, then please type it out and I'll try to answer it. Integrated with the ERP, is it integrated with the ERP? Even though I'm working in standalone mode, this doesn't really, if I'm working in standalone mode, then this doesn't really matter. If not, then yeah, you can have that ticked, but that's normally governed anyway by whether you are integrated to the ERP or not. All right, yeah, guys, just to be very clear, I am picking on Zimbabwe, but that's only because I don't have any people from Venezuela I don't have Venezuela in my region, otherwise I'd be picking on them as well. Yeah, sorry about that, Armand. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just sadly it has turned into one of the case studies of what happens when things go wrong with government. So, but it's also things that we need to take into account when we're dealing with retail, because yeah, retail has people are still buying and selling stuff even when the government's collapsing around them. Cool. So information tender, if you want to go put information tender out there, does it require manager authorization? There might be times where you need to go and do a manager authorization for a specific payment type if it's an obscure payment type. So for instance, if I was paying in pounds, or something like that, then it might be a case of, okay, we need a manager authorization because it's a foreign currency, it's a weird currency that we got. Or otherwise you might not. The other one is require manager authorization for refund. Do you require it? If you require the authorization, this is more common because I find that, like for instance, or to use the previous example, if a guy paid in pounds, is he going to get refunded in pounds? Or is he just going to get refunded in dollars or whatever your local currency is? So for instance, in Cambodia, to pick on somebody, well, not to pick on anybody else, guys, just to understand, for instance, in Cambodia, if you've got two currencies, the real and the dollar, then, do you need to have manager authorization if you're refunding for US dollar, or are you always going to refund in the real? And next up is one of the most vital ones, specific for credit cards, is mask the credit card number. Oh Lord, yes. Oh, by everything you value, yes. Because like I said yesterday, you would not believe that somebody who couldn't, you would not believe that somebody could count to beyond 10 without taking their shoes and socks off. Can remember 20 credit card numbers, but my word, yes, can they do that. So, all right, so mask your credit card numbers. This is actually becoming not just the standard, but also the, how can I put it? It's also mandatory in a lot of countries these days. So, yeah, just be very careful about that, because if it's mandatory, it's, well, mandatory. You have to mask the credit card number, and we do support that. By the way, some of you guys might have heard about this fancy new regulation called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation from the EU. We are fully GDPR compliant. So as well as many of the other rules and laws that are coming up in a lot of the other countries, we've checked them out in most of the major places, and we are compliant on them. If you do have a question about that, that's what the forum's for, or ask your local product expert, and we'll be happy to go say yes or no, or I'll get back to you on that. Which, if it's a I'll get back to you on that, it's probably going to be a, yeah, no, we're going to need to do something about that. But fortunately, certainly I have not really ever had that happen. Touch wood. Yeah. So, Next up is allowing over-tender. Now, what this means is, for instance, if I go and, so here we go, 64.45, I go cash, right? Now, normally, am I going to have the exact amount on me of 64 Rand 53? No. The likelihood of it is actually pretty much, well, the likelihood of it is actually zero because we don't deal with like 3 cents out here anymore in South Africa, unfortunately for various reasons. So I will not have this exact amount of money on me. So instead, I will pay something like maybe, let's go with 70 Rand. So that's why you should have it highlighted. I can go $70, enter, and with that, when I press OK, it will then come up and say, you need to pay 547. Well, normally that should be rounded, actually. There's some settings. Once again, I do funny things with my system, and in this case, it's rands masquerade. It's the dollars masquerading as rands, so which is why we've got funny numbers. But the entire idea is that that will give you the change to you over there. And that is that is what I was trying to show is an example of an over-tender amount, of an over-tender type. Now, the over-tender, you can limit it to how much you want it to go. At the moment, it's set to 0, which effectively means infinite. Yeah, that's one area where you can go set that to be, that's one area where you can go and set exactly how much you want it to be able to over-tender by, because one of the other things that, sorry, China, we don't do the change due in multiple currencies. There are, as much, you can, that's where the extensibility would come in, I'd say. Okay, so, all right, so that's an example of over-tendering where, you know, you've taken something and you've said, okay, it's a bit more, and you can go put it in for a different amount. You can also, like I said over here, you can put in different over-tendered rate types. The reason for that is typically what happens in countries where there's a lot of counterfeiting, and I do know this for anybody who's ever worked with US dollars outside of the US, the likelihood of it being counterfeit is actually remarkably high because, yeah, it's the money had to get outside the US in some way, and in a lot of cases that wasn't really legal. And once you get into that sort of market and world, then counterfeiting does become a problem. And one of the ways that it is that counterfeit notes get into the system is, for instance, you go along and say, yes, I'd like to buy a Coke with $100, a $100 bill. Now, in the US, where they would generally train their cashiers, okay, this is what you look for in a fake note. That's slightly different when you go and you deal with, say, well, not to pick on Zimbabwe and Cambodia, but, you know, just in countries like that, generally your main currency is the currency you're going to be familiar with. When all of a sudden you change over to, say, using a different currency, then people go, oh, hang on, well, this, it looks like I think a US dollar bill should look, you know, but I don't really have a point of reference at it. And so that's where, that's how currency, that's, the cashier will just accept it and assume that it's a US dollar bill. Meanwhile, it might just be a clever forgery, which is why you really want the over-tender rate to be set relatively low on those ones, because you shouldn't be trying to go and, you know, swap around counterfeit bills for real bills, because if I buy a Coke with a $100 bill, the money I'm getting back is most likely going to be proper currency, whereas the money that I put in, I know is not proper currency. So just be aware of that. Does it affect the tipple amount? The tipple amount that we're talking about over here is there's an alert that we can put on the actual till itself to go say, how full is the cash draw? Or how full do we expect the cash draw to be? Because you don't really want to get your cash draw too full of money, because then it just makes a really attractive target for a smash and grab. We have to, yes, guys, we have to deal with things like that. It's an issue. After that, allow partial tender. So can you partially tender something? So so for instance, can I do a part tender for something or not? So what I mean by that is, can I do a part payment in this and a part payment in something else? In this case, I can. There are additional setups that you can do with your payment types, but you can, which we'll have a look at some of the other ones. Over here, you need to go and add each store. So if I create a new store, I will need to come and say which payment types are used for that store. Okay, so that is something that you can go set over here, that you can set over here for this. So just be aware of that. You will need to, because you can create a payment type and not add any stores, and it's not going to appear, which is why, like I showed you earlier, when I go to payments, well, there's only 12 of them, as opposed to over here there's 15. That, and I also just deactivated some of them. Finally, surcharges. You can put in a payment surcharge. The payment surcharge over here being being something that, for instance, I think I described it I described it on Monday, where, for instance, I want to buy a can of Coke, but with a credit card, where there's going to be an additional transaction charge for that. That's going to be like that's going to cost me extra. For that, I can go put that in here if I want. The same thing over here. I think I described the one from Italy, where they said, okay, you pay more than what was it, 2,000 euros, then you can well, then you'll get a discount of, well, I've got this slightly wrong, around percent. No, you're not going to get a 2,000% discount. You'll get a 2% discount if you go and you pay greater than 2,000 euros. Just need to do that. So there you go, something like that. Okay, so that's one way of setting up your payment types. And yes, the nice thing about the store applicable is you can even go set which stores things are applicable at. So that means that you can actually say, okay, this store uses this cash payment type, whereas that store uses that cash payment type. And in the background, you'll be able to link each individual payment type to different accounts. So if you want to do that for each store, you can do that. Yeah, when I say accounts, I mean the accounts of the ERP that would you be integrated through to, just to be clear. So let me just go and open up one more, well, actually one or two more that we want to have a look at. I'm just going to go across to credit card, right, and you can go see that there are some of the other columns that are available, some of the other fields that are now available for this, and also you'll see this one does not allow over tender. The reason for this is that with a credit card, you're going to pay the exact amount. You're not going to go do half and half. Okay, if I have a look across at, say, let's go through to custom, which is a custom payment type. In fact, before I go to custom, let me go through to foreign currency. Now, earlier when we asked, can you pay in foreign currencies? And yes, you can. What happens is it's going to ask for a foreign currency exchange rate for today. That needs to be loaded in here on your exchange rate screen, which typically would be integrated through from your ERP. But once you've got that in, once that's there, you'll be able to put that all through. Well, you'll be able to go and say, okay, this is the amount of dollars, or this is the amount of pounds or euros or rupees, whatever it might be that comes through for that. And it'll give you an option for which one you want to pay in. However, if you want to go set a specific currency button over there, so if I want a pound button in this case, I go and I set my type to custom, I then set my currency to pound, and I can go and set exactly what my default amounts are for the rest of it that I want. Okay. Finally, if I go through to custom, by the way, we do also do checks. I do know that checks are still done in certain parts of the world. Nigeria and Kenya are the two areas I do find that people still pay by check. Yeah, that's, I hate to say it, guys, but those are two areas I would not expect people to accept checks. But, well, I also know that checks are still big in US and Canada. Go figure. Okay, but if I come through here to custom, I want to point out on a custom payment type, I want to point out that there is the additional setup that you can do here where you can add in additional payment attribute types. These are essentially additional user-defined fields that you can put through when you are doing a payment. And so if you wanted to go put through things like valid values or additional options to select stuff, you can put that in here. Okay. So that covers payment types. If you've got any questions, if I've left out anything, please let me know, guys. Next thing up is the, we've covered tax codes, surcharges. So now surcharges are a very interesting area because they can be dealt with in multiple ways. Now the entire idea with the surcharge is, for instance, it could be for delivery, like I've got one for FedEx and DHL here. I've also got surcharges of various percentages loaded up. Let's go open up the surcharge of 10% one. Okay, hang on, we have a question. Okay, Zeph says, I don't know what the essence of a basic type deployment on update 6 on the system. Yeah, Zeph, we covered that pretty much yesterday. I'm sorry, I don't really have too much time for that. What I would recommend for this, for your question, is have a look at the quick start guide on the CKP. That will probably be your best answer to that. That's quite a detailed question. Okay, so over here, just back to surcharges. Over here, I've got when we get to reports, Steph, we'll have a look at that question. Okay, so surcharges, I can select two different types of surcharges. They can be an amount or a percent. These can effectively be applied to individual items. So earlier we were talking about the, well actually yesterday we were talking about tax on tax. So that would be a tax and then a tax on top of that. A surcharge can be used for an additional tax in that way. So you can actually load that up out on a specific item. I believe, Chana, it was you, if I remember correctly, where it was a 10% VAT and then a 3% on top of that. Typically, we'd put the surcharge in at 3% on the actual alcohol items. That's the best way to actually put it in. And you can have this post to a separate VAT, to a separate tax account when it links through to your ERP. Or at least this is one way I've done it. There are other ways out there. Once again, consult your local LPE for the exact way to do it, for the best way for your region. So you can set your, what are you doing? Is it going to be an amount or a percent? Is it, what sort of amount is it? 10%? Is it discountable? Is it refundable? Is it taxable? Is it a sales tax code? Is it a purchase tax code? And does it get loaded? Well, does it have sales and purchasing tax loaded on it? If you are using a surcharge for a tax, you would not necessarily put a tax on the surcharge then. Just to be aware of that. In which case you would also just go say it's not taxable. Next thing is it added to the item cost or not? And this over here, user payment discount surcharge while refunds is not particularly straightforward, but what it essentially means is there are certain instances when I do a refund where I can also have an admin fee associated with the refund. So if I do a refund, right, then I will go and say, okay, refund this, I want to go refund X, Y, and Z. Okay, that's fine. We will put a refund through for you, but we are also charging a handling fee. And it's a legitimate business practice. You're allowed to do this in certain cases. Typically, we actually have it out here in South Africa quite a bit with your layaway, lay-by purchases. So 10% down, 12 months to pay. We typically have that because if people do a refund halfway through, they say, okay, right, I want my money back. You're allowed to take, I think it's a 1% surcharge that will go through with it. Okay, finally, banks. We have them. You can load up your individual banks if you want. It's not necessary for the system to actually work with. The big thing about the banks is that they are more there to, it's more there as a selection criteria or reporting criteria. It's not actually necessary for anything to process, because 9 times out of 10, you're not processing through a bank, you're processing through a payment gateway. Next up, retail config. Okay, we've got quite a bit that we need to get through on this today, but I'm hoping we'll finish at least down to POS customization and maybe get a bit into operations today, but we'll see how we go. I know we did start late, but if we can carry on until at least, well, be 12:30 my time, then we'll be able to make sure that we've covered everything. If that's not possible, please let me know. Okay, so retail profiles. Now, retail profiles we've actually encountered before. We actually encountered them way back in System Initialization Enterprise, where it asked us for a retail profile. And you'll see why it asked us for one of these way back there, and you'll see why we tackle it over here in retail config. Now, retail profiles are increasingly going to start appearing in the system, primarily because it's one of the areas where there's just how can I put it? Every system has an area where there is a giant place of settings that don't really go anywhere else. Generally, well, sometimes it's called general settings, sometimes it's called page settings, sometimes it's called admin setup, or whatever it is. But generally, I find most systems have an area like this. And we've put a lot of these under retail profile. And the reason we put it here is it gives us the ability to apply these settings very specifically all the way down to individual people. Whereas you're going to want to be able to do that sometimes, whereas in other times you want to just apply them on a more general level. So that's why we created the retail profile. So you'll see over there, there's a subsidiary. If you want, you can put departments in the system. Our departments are not, the departments are more a reporting feature. As you see over here, it's code, description, and active. It's not really something we look at too much, but it is available if you want it. Next thing up is default transaction mode. Things like, so what this means is when I open up the point of sale, does it automatically go to sale, or does it go to sales exchange or sales refund is the more likely answer. Now, that over there can be set. That can be set depending on where you want to use your point of sale. In some places, some stores actually have a refund area, which means that any point of sale in your refund area, you want to come and pop up as sale refund. It mustn't pop up as sale. Whereas the tills with the POS in the sales area, that needs to pop up as sale and not sale refund. Okay. But you've got different options all the way down through to quotes. So there's a fair bit that you can do there. Auto pause lock timeout, auto idle pause timeout. You can go set those. So the difference being the pause will automatically lock in, say, 30 seconds. Well, don't put it as 30 seconds, maybe 300 seconds, which is about 5 minutes. So you can put that in. Or otherwise, idle pause time, if the pause is not being used, then it will automatically lock after a period of time. The difference being is that the auto lockout means that in 5 minutes you will have to sign in again, whereas the idle pause time is so long as nobody's touching the screen or doing something, then after a certain period of time it will automatically lock. We have the same setting for the management console timeout. Over here, this is the auto close complete sale view. That's the screen. That's the view I was going and talking about over here. Let me just go get through to the screen over here. So does the screen automatically close or not? Login per transaction. You can do that. Once again, it depends on which environment you're in. Are you in a high value environment where it's like jewelry or TVs or something like that, where you've got many people using one till? then you maybe want login per transaction. Otherwise, typically if it's a normal person behind the till at a grocery store, they're not going to need to log in per transaction. Same thing would apply if you were doing, say, tables and chairs, or at a restaurant. There, each waiter or waitress would need to go and log in per transaction. After that, you can go set the use zip validation. Yeah, not really used outside of America. Show transaction grid headers. It's basically asking, do you want to go see this type, product code, description? Generally, the answer is yes. So just rather turn that on and leave it. Price override upper and lower limit. So how far can you change the price? As you can see, I can change this one over here. I can change it for like 900 million%, but yeah, up to you on how far you want to do that. Keyboard mode. So what keyboard are you using? Generally, this will be set to US QWERTY keyboard. I do know some places some of the places that still speak French, they use the AZERTY keyboard. Yes, there is actually an AZERTY keyboard, but that's up to them. You can also use the US block keyboard, which was a programmable keyboard, which used to be used back in the day, but is not really used anymore. Generally, US QWERTY keyboard is used pretty much everywhere, and that essentially means what's your virtual keyboard going to look like. After that, display keyboard for authorization. So if I do something that needs authorization, then it will bring up the keyboard. Transaction mode alignment. Is it going to display, essentially what side are things going to display on the screen? Are they going to display on the left-hand side, or are they going to display on the right-hand side? And so I'm going to have this apparel logo up here, or is it going to be on this side? So is it going to be on the right or the left? You can choose which side you want it to be set to. That's not really used so much anymore. Typically, it's more used for like your your right to left languages, such as Arabic, whereas in English, or using your Roman alphabet, then it's not really. Open item edit view automatically. So if I scan in an item, does it automatically open up this view when I scan it in? Might be the case, might not be the case, up to you. New row for scans. So you can have moments where people in certain countries, if I went and I scanned the same item again, okay, instead of it going to quantity 2, it would then put a separate row underneath for every individual quantity that I bought. In some cases, they do use that for the express lane tills. Yeah, if you want to go that way, you can do it. But it's, once again, it's up to the customer. It's an option. And like I said yesterday, you can see there's a lot of options in here. You're like, why on earth would somebody do this? And then you remember, well, somewhere out there, there's a use case for X or Y or Z. Yeah, open item edit view on column click. Essentially, that means that if I click over there, it takes me through to the item edit view on the item. Typically, yes. Refund without receipt, exchange without receipt. These over here are very important because you might want your managers to be able to do a refund without receipt, but you certainly wouldn't want your normal tellers to do a refund without receipt. They're going to need to have some sort of receipt to go say, ha, I received blah, or whatever the case might be. Auto update change amount and payments. Then do you want to auto update that change amount? And what is your change amount currency? So what's typically, yes, you do want to auto update your change amount. There's no reason not to, or very few reasons not to. And what change amount currency? So what currency are you giving change in? I think when we discussed this earlier, is can we have change in multiple currencies? Essentially not really, because over here you would be giving, it will assume that you're giving change in USD, or in my case in USD or whatever it might be. You can have that in different currencies for different POS, but that's entirely up to you. Donation product, you can set up a donation product where it will take rounding and put it to that product, and then essentially using some accounting in the background. You can have that appear into a donation account, as it were. That's up to you. Yeah, but I'm not going to go deep into that. That's not something that I find people really use. Do you refund promotional items or not? So for instance, if I bought an item on promotion, let's go bring up a promotion. So let's go with the woman's suit. Bring that up, put that here. Okay, right there. So if this needs to get returned for whatever reason, can I get a refund on it, or do I not get a refund on it? Some cases you do not get refunds on it. And once again, remember the retail profile can be set down to per user. So you might want your manager to be able to do the refund, but you might not want your cashier to do it that way. Print suspended transaction. Yeah, so if I suspend the transaction, yeah, guys, please type the question if you do have one. So if I suspend the transaction, will it then go print something out, or is it going to go and, or not? This is up to you if you want to do that. I would rather recommend not at the moment. Delete suspended transactions at the end of day. I believe one of the questions that we had was, is there a time limit on suspended transactions? Yeah, this would be the time limit, day end, and then I would delete it, to be honest. Auto add cashier salesperson, warn if transaction line item has no salesperson and mandatory salesperson. These three kind of work together. So it kind of forces people to go say, I sold blah, or I did X, or I did Y, because in a lot of places you have to get a salesperson to take credit for the sale. Yeah, it's up to you if you want to do that, or if you want to do this this way. Yeah, you can set it up. It's there. I think it's relatively straightforward. Show negative inventory resolution. If you have a point where you're trying to sell something that has got no stock in, then you can bring up a screen that has got negative inventory that will go say, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want an alternate product? Do you want to go place a sales order? Do you want to go and mark it as a lost sale, or what do you want to do with it? Yes, you can have that active. Otherwise, it's up to you. It also, the thing with negative inventory is it depends on how people want to handle it. In some cases, they say, oh, hang on, wait, there's been an error. Okay, I can't really sell that. Because, don't get me wrong, in stores in particular, stock counting is a nightmare, and it's very rarely accurate, and very rarely even if it is accurate, it's very rarely accurate for very long, because there's always stuff being moved around and people forget to process things into the system, and, oh yeah, we'll do that later kind of mentality. Because of that, it does mean that stock is quite often not in the place it's meant to be, unless you've got somebody who's really on top of it like no tomorrow. The problem is that the thing is with that, yeah, it can sometimes means that you do have stock of something that you didn't think that you had. And if you have a person going and standing there saying, I want to buy this item, and the system says you've got no stock of this in the system, it's a bit difficult. You know, sometimes if it happens rarely enough, then they can go say, okay, hang on, wait, get the manager. The manager can say, okay, hang on, let's just, oh, there's been a small fault, we'll just sort this out, and you can quickly fix it. Otherwise, you just let the negative inventory thing go through. It's up to you. Use quick complete. Once again, I don't really recommend that you do this, and it's a legacy setting for us really anyway. Confirmation required for quick complete, yes. Complete tendering on zero balance, yes. You want to do that. Restrict search of other POS transactions. This is specifically to go stop one salesperson looking at the stock transactions of another, or the other transactions of another salesperson. Yeah, because salespeople do this. I hate to say it, I've seen this at a number of stores where what would actually happen is one guy would be selling, he'd be really on fire going and selling stuff, and the rest of the team ganged up on him, distracted him, so that the rest of the team could get the sales. Yeah, this way you can restrict the POS search of those, so the other team doesn't, even if they suspect he's doing really well, they can't prove it. They don't have proof to go and try and sabotage him. Use last selected event for next transaction. Essentially what this is saying is, if I'm, avoid current transaction, Okay, so let's say I just did a refund, okay, and I complete the refund at the end, then the system, when it came back, would automatically kick into sale refund. But if I then afterwards, after that sales refund, I did a sale, the system would go through and then it would kick back into a sale. So instead of it depends on what your last thing was. If you do a sale, then the system will automatically kick back into sale mode. If you do a refund, then it will automatically kick back into refund mode. I would need to actually go, no, it's now a sale that I'm doing, then do that. I can see that in smaller businesses you might use it, but in larger businesses you would not really do that. Open product search, a barcode not recognized, yeah, it does, it says on tin. Allow combining multiple transaction refund and single transaction if you want to. Most places will not do that. They go and they say, I don't want to refund multiple items just because I can. It needs to be a refund. There needs to be a slip. It needs to be with a certain period of time. All those things they will put through. Use default business date as current date, and well, use current business date in transaction search. So if I come along here to my transaction search, it will automatically go put my date to date from it. That's it. Okay. That will, by the way, the sharp eye to you will have noticed that the business date is 22 of the 3rd, so I haven't run a day end in a while. That's why on the transaction search, when it brings it up, it's 22nd of the 3rd, as opposed to being, well, 9th of the 10th. So I probably need to go run a day end one of these days. Application theme. Right. Well, now for something a bit more fun. So you can actually go, there are certain themes that are embedded into the background over here. Most people just use it as this normal sort of iVend, I think we call it iVend Metro skin. But if you want to go change it, you can. So you could even go put on something like, for instance, here we go, pumpkin or Valentine, there you go, pumpkin. Right there, if you want something slightly spooky and you see it changes to little, to sort of bones and all the rest of it. Otherwise, if you want something a bit more nice, you can go have Christmas. Okay, and the little check boxes change to things like your little presents and things like that. Other one is Valentine's, at which I hear all the girls go, ooh, it's so pretty. You can get little Valentines and little hearts, and it's all very cute. But yeah, most people just end up loading it up and leaving it as that, because leaving it as the iVend Metro skin, because it's just easier and it works. So please be aware the skins that are set here only apply to the management console. They do not apply to the point of sale. Okay, allow login as business date is not the same as the current date. That's that error I get when I log in, because obviously I haven't run a day end in almost 6 months. So that's why we're getting it different. Allow sales without serial or batch selection. Yeah, just be careful about that, because it depends what your integration to your ERP is. You know, most ERPs I know will require serial numbers to go through. If you're not integrated to an ERP, then you can allow that, and then there should be an issue. Allow recalling multiple suspended transactions. Well, that's fairly straightforward. Apply a coupon on lowest price. Log voided transactions, I would always definitely check, because that's one of the first things that most cashiers do to try and actually figure out the system. And trust me, guys, the cashiers who are sitting there all day long, even in times when it's all day long, and I can guarantee you they're not processing things all day long. They have got downtime, and they're just sitting there waiting for people to come and buy stuff. During those times, I can guarantee you someone there inevitably will go, what does this button do? Yeah, so it's they will try and find ways to go and break things out of the system. Yeah, so log voided transaction, that's one of your first lines that you can do to go stop that. Maximum number of lines in transaction. Yeah, typically this is the only place, there's only one place I can really think that this would appear, and that's in some of the supermarkets. They've got 10 items or less checkout, so similar to the one setting we had earlier where it was one scan individual line per scan. You could also have maximum number of lines in transaction go, say, 10. You could do that. I mean, it's up to you because, but yeah, if you want to go that way, my general feeling is that always it's if you want to go that way. It's not. I don't like it when I find that when restrictions like that are put in, 9 times out of 10 they will go say there will always be an exception on the first day, and there will always be an exception that makes people take it off. So, but it's there. You can do it if people want it. They can do it. Do you want transaction preview printing? I would not really do that, specifically because that's also one of the other things that people do is they will do a preview of the print that, and then cancel the transaction. Yeah. So, and yes, people do that. Trust me, everybody does the kind of stuff that they do, and the kind of things that they get up to is ridiculous. Sometimes the ways people try to find to break the system are amazing. Stock take is Armand. You're going to need to give me a bit more information about that. Yeah, if stock take is affected by what? I'm not quite sure what you're referring to there. Okay, maximum lines. Yeah, yes, it will. Yeah, okay, it does also affect the stock take screen. Yeah, if you do want to go set that for stock take as well, you can do that. Okay, so sorry guys. Okay, do you want to go and do your product image and search and product height and search? So if product image and search, so if I do a search for a product, does it, let's see if this is working. Yeah, there you go. So does it display the image or not? Also, do you want to specify a particular height for the image? So how big must the image be? Up to you. With 0, it should auto-size the image, to be honest. But you can make it bigger if you want. Allow for tax-free transactions. Now, tax-free transactions, you have to understand tax-free transactions are different than tax-exempt transactions. A tax-free transaction is taxed normally, but then the tax amount is removed from the transaction. Okay, so as opposed to a tax-exempt transaction, which never had tax on it in the first place. We do, and as you probably guessed, we do both ways. You can do tax and tax-exempt. Well, tax-exempt and tax-free. But do you allow this specific person, these people attached to this profile, to do tax-free? Then pos layouts. This is where you'll go in your set, which layout appears at the front end over here. So what does this look like? Is it like that, or is it like, I go over here to, okay. Or is it like one of these layouts, or whatever custom layout you go and you set up, is it like one of those? File delimiter import, is it going to be a comma? Is it going to be a semicolon? Is it going to be a tab? That's up to you. So for some of the imports we do are from text files. You can select what delimiter you want. Typically comma, to be very honest. Unless you're in a region that uses the comma for a decimal point, then you might want to go and use something else, but it's up to you. Okay, okay, for tax-free. Okay, so let me just go over tax-free again. Okay, so on a normal transaction, let me bring up an item. Okay, and I go item edit. This item over here is going to have tax associated with it. Okay, it's my tax code. As indicated, it's 4%. Now, getting into tax is, we're kind of headed into the weeds over here. There are other things that go on with it. I do have, by the way, the reason it says 74.88 over there and it says 87 over there is because there is actually a surcharge that is associated with the specific item. of, I think it's $15 or something like that. There is a surcharge associated with it, and then beyond that, the tax is then put onto that to go create it. Okay, but typically what would happen with tax is in fact, actually the best way to go and explain it might be if I'm going to bring up my Excel. Okay. So I'm not going to deal with quantity because it's ultimately something that just deals with price. Price, tax percentage. So let's go say that let's use round numbers. So let's go say that it's a $50 or whatever item. I'm going to go say that my tax is, say, let's do 10%, and that's going to give me a total of 55. Okay, nice and simple. For a tax exempt transaction, this over here would be a normal transaction. For a tax exempt transaction, all right, the price would be 50. Your tax would be 0 because your tax is, if it's a tax exempt tax code, it's 0, which means that your total would be 50. Okay. Okay. For a tax-free transaction, okay, your price is still 50. Your tax is 10%, okay, but in the actual transaction itself, they agree to remove the tax amount. So it's actually going to equal 55 minus 5, okay, which is going to be 50, and that is tax-free. Do you see the way, does that explain it better? Okay, right, there we go. So yeah, guys, this over here is one of the weirder things. Well, it's not one of the weird things. It's tax. It's always weird. Governments are weird. They just, yeah. How about inclusive tax? Now thank you, Chana. The inclusive tax is set per item. Okay, inclusive, it's an actual setting on the item itself. So, okay, if I were to do an inclusively taxed item, okay, then if I was to do inclusively taxed, then it would be 55 with a tax of 10%, which under my tax-free rules would effectively work out to a similar calculation. Okay, effectively, once again, I'm using much shorthand over there for it. To use an example of products like this, as was one of the other questions I got, was, okay, typically products like this are treated this way in specifically airports. There are also certain tax-free zones. I know, for instance, I was in Venice for one of the jobs when I was in Italy, and they, because they are very much a touristy international city, they actually had a tax-free sticker on some of the stores over there have got tax-free status, which means you can go into them and say, I would like to buy this tax-free, because you're a traveler. You can go. Effectively, what's meant to happen is when you leave a country, you're meant to go and say, okay, I want to get a tax rebate of blah for all the stuff I bought, and you're able to go claim your tax back. Which it depends. It also depends. Are you traveling for? What are you traveling for? Are you traveling for business? Are you traveling for pleasure? What did you buy? Certain items are tax exempt, and that depends on which country you're in. So there are laws around it. But typically in places like Venice, certainly I think even Disney World or some of the other places, typically they will be, Cape Town waterfront is another one which has got a lot of tourists. You'll see that some of the stores actually have a sticker on them going saying tax-free purchase available. So you'll be able to go and purchase an item tax-free because you are from overseas and not from out here in you're not from out here in South Africa, and you will be able to claim that back anyway for certain things, but not for everything. Yes, trust me, it's a headache, and once you, it's a rabbit hole, and it just, yeah, no, right there. Certainly considering what some of our taxes get used for. Yes, just, yeah. Anyway, enough of that pontificating on what's going on. Okay, I hope I've explained tax-free okay. Show available items only in promotions and upsells. So, for instance, if I were to now put in my promotion and I didn't have any quantity of this available or any quantity, well, that's the same item as on promotion, but I didn't have any of this item on available, then it would not show that item for promotion. Check on cash draw status. Yeah, you can check for cash draw, check for printer status. These two checks happen on startup. So it's to go check, is the printer working? Is the cash draw working? Number of records to display on default search is 1,000. Yeah, that is, you'll actually see that if I do, if I do an item search and I go search, you'll see up here, it goes and says, showing top 1,000 records. The reason for that is it's a bug with Windows that we've had before with handling of memory leaks. And specifically causing memory leaks, because when the pictures are loaded into here, they can go and overload the system. Well, they can cause an error in Windows that a patch of Windows is now fixed. So yes, that is one of the issues. That is one of the issues there. But because of that, we also did a workaround to go say, look, you can set over here how many you want to bring up. Is it only 1,000? Do you want to bring up, say, 10,000? It also depends on the sort of machine that you're working on. I mean, if you're working on a particularly low-spec machine, you can say, well, yeah, you know, we don't want to bring 10,000 items through, because then then what's going to happen is you're going to sit there and go search, and it's going to go loading, 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 and then half an hour later go bring it through. That way you can at least manage the performance on some of these. Barcode scanning on POS. Okay. Do you want to go, so yes, what can you scan as a barcode? Products, customers, transactions, salespersons, coupon scanning, and then scanning of the loyalty card. If you've got that, you can do that. The quick button panel, if you're using it, otherwise you can leave that off, as well as, but once again, the quick button panel is used for, is used a lot for your mobile POS. Matrix product information panel, you can also put that there. The matrix product information panel is, to go show you that, is I can do an item search. And well, actually, I'll show it to you once we're going to get to the matrix products. It'll make more sense in context there. Next thing up, manager overrides. Where do you require manager overrides? Cost protection override to go stop people going and overriding the cost. Credit limit override, reprint transaction receipts. So if I want to reprint a transaction receipt, I need to have a manager override. If I want to change the salesperson, yeah, I'm not going to read all of these, but some of the big ones are void sale or void item, things like transaction search, fulfillment, suspend, recall is another one, cash in, cash out. Those are certainly the areas where you want, and transaction refund. Those are certainly the areas where you're generally going to want to manage an override. The reason I don't have a lot of these checked is because this is a demo system, and I don't want to have to stop every 30 seconds and say, okay, manage an override. After that, we get the poll display details. Once again, like I said before, this is not something that the ladies at a gentleman's club do. This is what is displayed on that dot matrix display that I've shown you before. Does everyone remember what a poll display looks like? Hands up. Okay, I'm seeing lots of hands, so I'm going to say yes. If you don't, then please go and okay, I'm just going to put your hands down. Okay, if you don't, then please type it in the question box, and we will go and have a look at it, and we can have a look at it again. If you do look for a poll display, make certain your save search is on. Otherwise, you might get certain unwelcome views. Well, certain views, they might be welcome, but they're certainly not welcome at work. Okay, start transaction, complete transaction, sale message. So what happens with that is at the start of the sale, it will go say, thank you for shopping with iVend, or thank you for shopping, and you can control exactly what it says on this poll, on the poll display. Next thing, max discount details. So how much discount can you actually give somebody and how much can you not? Go there. Reason code details required. Okay, the reason code details required over here is, this is to go say, what do you require? You can set certain points in the system like cash in, cash out, and you can go, or doing an expense, and you can go say, why do you require to do this? Why do you want to do this? And they can go put in a reason code to go say, I want to do a cash out because we got too much money. Because there's too much money in the till, we need to do a cash out. Or cash in, there's not enough money in the till. Or whatever the case might be. And you can go select what the codes are that go with that. You can also go say, do you want to put comments for that? So there's specific comments. So for cash in, why are you doing a cash in? Well, not enough money, comment, money was stolen. Might be something like that. I'm hoping not like that, but might be something like that. POS wildcards. The POS wildcards used to be more used with the programmable keyboards, but essentially what's happening is that if I select this, and I was to go type, for instance, at 4, I press that, you'll see that it goes and it changes the quantity to 4. Okay. So for price discount, you can still use them if necessary. If you can still use them if you want to. It's not necessary. Email receipts. So what is my email receipt? What is my template that I'm using? Which report is going with it? And where is it sending from? Customer display settings. I can have a customer display that pops up. What do I want on the customer display? You can set that as well. And then you can also have product display settings. We'll have a look. That's also part of the matrix stuff. We'll have a look at the item matrix setups a bit later. And then if I want to do transaction signature capture, what do I want to capture signatures on? So we do actually have integrations through to signature capture tablets via OPOS. Once again, you can then sign on the tablet with your finger and it will record it into the system. After that, so that is retail profile, and you're going to see it start popping up across the settings that we go into now. So it's things like subsidiaries. Well, subsidiaries won't necessarily have a retail profile in them, but if we have a look at subsidiaries, this is how you can start to go divide up your database. So certain people in certain places go and see only certain subsidiaries. As you saw in the retail profile, it is a selection, as well as you've also seen it in payments. There are selections over there for subsidiaries for this. Defaults, is it a local currency? Is there an address? Is there a culture info? Is there what time zone? So the entire idea with, is it tax inclusive or tax exclusive? Yeah, so that was one of the questions that we had. Where can you set tax inclusive or exclusive? You can set that here. You can also set that to products. You assign it to existing products, existing customers, and vendors and existing employees. Do you want to do that at setup or not? That's up to you. The entire idea about this is that typically with subsidiaries, you will have a subsidiary for maybe different countries. So if you're operating, say, over here in South Africa, let's say you're operating South Africa in Zimbabwe or Cambodia, Vietnam, or one of the other many places around the world where you generally have stores and, say, a couple of stores in one country, a couple of stores in another. Technically, they still form part of the greater group, but you do still want to go keep an eye on them. They might have slightly different time zones. They might have slightly different languages, which is why you can set the culture info. And they certainly have got different taxes in different places. So you will probably need to set that up. There might also be cases where, for instance, you might have different subsidiaries in the same country. For instance, we've got one out here in South Africa called Cape Union Mart, where they've got their main stores, Cape Union Mart. Then they've also got like sub-stores. So they'll have a sub-store or a sub-store being like Old Car Key as a sub-store of theirs. And it only sells, and you can go to Old Car Key and buy Old Car Key items there, but you can also go to Cape Union Mart and buy Old Car Key items. But you can't go to Old Car Key and buy Cape Union Mart items, if that makes sense. So essentially, that's also another subsidiary case that we can put in. Next one up is warehouses. Okay, now warehouses that are generally pulled through from the ERP. Okay, part of your ERP setup will be that you have to go set up additional fields or whatever in the warehouses. You will probably need to create an in-transit warehouse, because when we are moving goods from one warehouse to another warehouse, they will have to go through an in-transit warehouse. The reason my in-transit warehouse is at the top is because it's the first warehouse that's generally created if I'm using iVend standalone. But if I open it up, you'll see that it is very, straightforward. I don't have locations in it. Essentially, the in-transit warehouse is just that. It's to go track stock end to end. It doesn't just leave one store and spontaneously appear at another store. If I go across to my slides, it doesn't just spontaneously exit this store and spontaneously arrive at that store. It doesn't just, that over there is, it generally takes maybe a couple of days, can take a couple of weeks, can take a couple of months to move, depending on which stores you're sending it to and where it goes. But in this specific case, it actually needs to come out, go into a transit warehouse, and then come back over there. Okay, the question I have is subsidiary being used as the same as branch in iVend? No. When a branch, I'm guessing, would probably be a store. Subsidiary would be an entirely different, well, it generally either an entirely different company or an entirely different brand is generally. A entirely different brand is probably a better description. So for instance, or an entirely different location. Typically, there's a good reason to go split them between the two. It's generally something like a governmental reason or something like that to go split the two, because most people don't want to operate two different brands. Otherwise, if it's going to be two different brands in the same country, then it's generally you're aiming at two different markets, aiming at upper market or lower market. So what exactly are you looking at? The same company, but two different areas that they're looking at. For instance, out here in South Africa, that would be ShopRite and Checkers. They're both owned by the same company, but ShopRite is targeted at your lower mass market, while Checkers is targeted at your upper mass market. Generally, actually, interestingly enough, I've been into both, and you can buy exactly the same item for generally about 5 to 10% cheaper in ShopRite, just out of interest. But typically, there's a reason that you want to go split it between subsidiaries, subsidiary being an entirely separate division, as it were. Okay, back to stock and transit. So stock and transit would come out of one store, go in, and then come into another store after a period of time. It's not a case of it just leaves one store and spontaneously arrives, because stock doesn't do that generally. No, stock doesn't do that, full stop. Nobody's invented a teleporter yet. And if they haven't told me. Okay, so that's why we have an in-transit warehouse. And you can put sales and tax codes on there as well. And you can, technically, you can have a negative, you can allow negative inventory in your in-transit warehouse. For the love of all that's holy, please don't. Your in-transit warehouse will turn into a black hole of stock just walking out the door that you never see again. You will never be able to reconcile it. After that, you can also go set up general warehouses. Typically, general warehouses we can use in standalone mode, or we can use in, you can either have it in standalone or in, or generally if we're in ERP, the ERP will handle the warehousing side, I find. But we can have standalone general warehouses that people just use iVend at. You put in your address, sales and tax code, what warehouse type it is it general, in transit, or retail? So general in this case. What is the associated in transit warehouse? What is your ownership type? Company owned, company operated. We do cater a little bit for franchisees. And this is where you put it in. Is it company owned, company operated? Is it company owned, franchisee operated? Is it franchisee owned, franchisee operated? But typically I find franchisees have got, I very rarely found franchisees have got similar franchising systems. For instance, Spa franchising is very different to, say, McDonald's franchising. Even within South Africa, Spa franchising is different to fruit and veg franchising, different to pick and pay franchising. There is no blueprint. There's no standard blueprint for franchising at the moment. And really that's because everyone is playing against each other. Hey, if you come with us as a franchise, we'll give you blah, blah, blah. If you come with us as a franchise, we'll do X, Y, and Z for you. So it's typically fairly custom in the way franchises are put out there. Then we also have, we finally have the actual retail stores. And this is where I can go say, what is my address? And the address I put in over here is, I can access it for my printouts if I want. If I don't, there's another place I can put in an address. Sales code, tax code, if it's associated with a specific warehouse, you can do that, otherwise no. Typically, once again, check your tax and VAT places, your regulations, because in America it's a mess. And I've seen this before, it's horribly a mess in some places. In fact, the worst that I know of, I believe Brazil is similar, but the worst I know of in America is one place in Denver, Colorado. You have 8 different taxes to take into account, depending on what you're selling. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, interesting fact, the reason Donald Trump, yes, the divisive president of the United States, a lot of the money he made was by going and getting, by going and working with people to go get those taxes alleviated. So some of the tax, so specifically for some of his properties. So what he would do is he'd go along to like New York City and say, I want to make this, I want to rebuild this property. I want to redevelop it, but I need to get money for that. If you give me a tax delay of 100 years on the property or a tax rebate for them, I'll be able to go use that in lieu of actually that of payment to go and attract investors to go get the property going. Very interesting, but he managed to do it that way. So he must have been doing something right to go to be worth a couple of billion. After that, warehouse type, retail. If you want the warehouse, essentially to explain the warehouse side, a warehouse can be, as you've seen, a warehouse can be in transit or general retail. Now, what that essentially means is essentially that's what's controlling the stock, what stock goes where. If it is a retail warehouse, there's a separate side that we need to set up, which is the store, which I'm going to look at next. The store being the area that we go and the store being the actual setup of the how do you actually go and control stuff, how do you go and how can I put it? The store being the actual place that you can actually go and control how things are sold. But the warehouse, so a warehouse, a retail warehouse will connect through to a store to go sell stuff. And any stock that's moved is removed from the retail warehouse, whereas the store setup, you'll see, goes and contains other setups like tax, like your like who you're selling to, how you're selling things. We'll see that in a minute when we get to it. There's your in-transit warehouse, ownership type. And in this case, I've enabled locations. And the entire idea with locations, as you'll see, is that they are essentially sub-areas of a warehouse. Now, these could be like I have here, where I've got a sales location and a refund location, and it's called sales or refund, very imaginative. Or I could have different locations where I sell different things from. So for instance, I might have a store where, for instance, I can only sell TVs from a specific location, okay, because there might be extra paperwork to go fill out for them. Or electronics from a specific location because they're high value items. So I don't want everybody to have access to them. So I say you can only sell this from here. So I can go say, yes, this is a location, but that is what it's sold from. You can also set these up in the items themselves. And please realize that while this is just the default location settings, these aren't all the location settings you can have for a store. You can have many, many, many more locations that you can put into a store. So, and we'll come to that. We'll look at that a bit later. Okay, so after that, we're going to have a look at stores. Here we go. So now this over here, we're going to say is it e-commerce or retail? It should always be retail for you guys. Subsidiary, which selling warehouse? So which warehouse am I effectively selling stock through? So this is the sales side of how I go and I set things up for store, the front of house side essentially. And you'll see that as we go through the different settings is that it's not focused on stock. It's focused on the other ways that we sell stuff. So over here, which address goes and prints out on my receipt. Email address, what is my bank account? That's where you can set that up. Retail profile. Yep, this pops up as well. At the moment I'm doing, and then I'll come back to explain the store with enterprise, but once we've covered the rest of it. But what is my cash customer? What is my purchase tax code? What is my sales tax code? Okay, so this is related specifically to the store. Unless I've got different tax setups in the background, in which case I can then go and that will then override what's over here. But this is the basic tax setup. Fulfillment plans. We will come back to fulfillment plans. We discussed them. I think it's going to probably discuss those tomorrow. Layaway plans, which we will also discuss tomorrow. Default salesperson, if you want a default salesperson. It's not mandatory to have one. You can just leave it blank if you want. Reassign tills at the end of the day. So if you've got people moving, so let's say you've got one person who might have a till. He can then move from one store to another. Well, he can then, sorry, not from one store. He can move from, it doesn't matter which till he goes to. Does he always go to till number 10? Or can they go, one day they work at till number 10 and one day they work at till number 1? That's essentially what this checkbox is. If they can move around, if there's no set tills, then you check this. Otherwise, if they always work number 10, then you go and you say, okay, then it's then you don't reassign them. Hardware profile, we'll have a look in a bit. As well as with the store grouping, I'll have a look at that. Which price list? The price list over here is which price list is the sales price list for the store. We're going to have a look at price lists a bit later tomorrow, I'm hoping, though looking at the way we're going, it might take a bit longer. You can have as many price lists as you want, but this is a specific price list that you're actually going to be used to sell stuff. And you'll see at the bottom I also have a button that says price list. And I can actually go and add a multiple price list over here. And I can say, okay, well, price list 1 is effective up to that date. But then we're going to say, then we move across to price list 2, and we can go say that that is effective up to, say, that date. And you can actually have your price list tick over at each stage. So that is something you can go set over here. It's nice. It works. You know, it's also nice you can go set up everything in the background months in advance, and you don't need to worry about it on the day and go saying, oh no, the new price list is coming in. I need to go and activate it now so it'll have time to go replicate down to the stores, but I can only activate it after the stores have closed, because if I replicate it too early, the people are going to get new prices. There's going to be confusions and problems. So with this midnight, it automatically ticks over. It automatically ticks over at the store to the right price list. Retail price list, as there is actually a retail price list. The reason that we've got two different price lists here is that sometimes at some stores you go and you see you have you'll have a you'll have a ticket or a tag on an item, and it will go say, was $9.99, now $49.99. Is it on-premise? Does it use the store scheduler service? If it uses the store scheduler service, then it goes and it emails from the store. Otherwise, it doesn't. And then what is your API server setup? Yeah, Armand, great. Yes, it would be. You know, so you could, I suppose you could go. Armand just said, the automatic changing of the price list would be great for hyperinflation, because you could go set up your, price lists. You could go set up your price list calculation and have them tick over automatically. Well, let's hope that it doesn't hit that way again. But I'm not holding my breath. Custom series. So what is your custom series? This is going to look very similar to what we set up in the enterprise. Every store will have its own custom series associated with it, specifically because if I create a product at the store, I want to make sure that there's no conflicts with what the products I create at the head office. Okay, registered management consoles. You do need to create, you see, this is part of what I was saying about managing your management consoles. When you go and or managing the licenses of your management consoles, because you can install management console everywhere, but if it doesn't have a specific instance that's associated with that specific device, it's not going to allow people to log into it. It's that simple. It's not going to recognize it as a valid management console, even if you've got rights and licenses. So there are ways to go manage the management console. So this is one of them. You can go see which management consoles have been assigned to a store, and which ones have got licenses. Fiscal mask, if you are using fiscal masks, some places do use fiscal printers. Kenya, I do know that, as well as Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, as well as a number of other places are all looking to go introduce them, because the government is guaranteed to be trying to take cut out of the cash you earn, along with places like Turkey and, well, let me see. Yeah, Turkey's one that's just insane. Hungary, Italy. You can also do registered handheld devices. We have an Android app for handheld devices that you can do, and these get registered much the way as a management console. Initialize eStore. Like I said, eStore is being faded out, and we've already discussed price lists. But before I close this screen, I want to talk about something that is actually pretty important, and that is the store mode. Okay, and you get two types of store modes. You get one type, which is store with enterprise, and another type, which is enterprise without store. And we call these mixed mode and enterprise mode. If I have a look at my deployment landscape over here, my store is being deployed in what I would term enterprise mode. That is where I've got a separate enterprise server. I'm connecting across the internet through to the store. Okay. But like I said when I initially showed this to you, I can have a situation where my main enterprise server is doubling up as my store server. This is a normal situation. This can happen. I see it, trust me, I see it at places. It is normally on the slightly smaller side. So the largest place I've seen do this is a store with about 30 branches. But that was because their main store had the head office at it. You know, so you would have that, and that's exactly the situation that this would be in, is my main store has a head office. And so your enterprise server and your store server are on the same machine for whatever reason. Even then, sometimes we don't always, even then, sometimes people still have an enterprise and a store server separate. It's up to you. But the big thing is that at this point, which is why I should have mentioned this earlier, when you create a store, you should generally, before you create the store, you should do a backup of the database, because if you get this setting wrong, you need to recreate the database. Now the store mode over here, enterprise with store, means that effectively I am running this as a mixed setup over here. The enterprise and the store are all running on one machine. If I'm not, then I would go select just store server, at which point it would go change the site ID to 2, and then you just go and you continue on with your setups. iVend will, you click OK, iVend will restart, and then it will be set correctly. If you get this wrong, you can call support, and they will probably charge you to go and change it. So fair warning. So just make sure if it's going to be, just make sure if it's going to be an enterprise, if it's going to be like this, it's going to be enterprise with store, that you select enterprise with store. If it is not going to be like this, if it's going to be like this, which for your larger sites it will be like this, then make sure that you're going to set it as the other one, which is enterprise without store, and it's correctly displayed. And it will correctly set itself up. Okay, so that is a big one. Trust me, guys. I find a lot of first-time people struggle with that, but don't worry, it's perfectly normal. That's why we put in a drop-down mode so you can actually go select which one. It's a bit clearer than the old way where you had to deal with ones and zeros, which was a pain. Okay, so those are the stores. Now, I also said that you can have store groups. Now, store groups are not subsidiaries. They're not divided out like that. But there are very good reasons why you might want to go and have a store group. And it could be that you want a store group for pricing, or a store group for taxation, or a store group for inventory. So, and these each have got different setups that you'll select the subsidiary. These each have got different setups that you will need to go and actually that you can go and apply these to. Now, you can have one store be part of multiple groups. So one store might be part of a pricing group. It might be part of a different group for taxation and another group for inventory. You can have it like that. And there's very good reasons for this. For pricing, for a store group for pricing, like I said earlier, you can have different brands that are different, aimed at different markets. So you can have one store group that's maybe aimed at a higher market, whereas you can have another group that's aimed at a lower market. So that might be a pricing strategy for them. Whereas for taxation, depending on where they are, there might be certain stores in certain areas that get certain taxation benefits, but certain stores in certain areas that do not get certain taxation benefits. That might be another one over there, as well as finally inventory. Typically, the inventory ones I find is to divide stores up by region. And essentially what this means is that you can go and put in stores. Okay, so let's go the avenues, and I'll also go put in the distribution center. That means that what I can do is that if I'm at the avenues, I can go see what stock is at this new distribution center, but that's all I can see. I can't see across multiple warehouses. And there's a very good reason for this, is that in a number of countries that I've been to, they are generally, for whatever reason, a lot of places seem to have suburbs with similar names. I'll give you an example of, okay, here's one. Everyone knows the Simpsons live in Springfield, USA. Last time I checked, there were at least, I think there were 15 or 20 different Springfields across the USA. There's Springfield, Oregon, Springfield, Massachusetts, Springfield, Missouri, I think as well. And those are just three I know off the top of my head. Now, imagine that you are a cashier and you're sitting there and you go and you tell the person, oh, we don't have any stock, but we have stock of this item in the Springfield store. Okay, that's wonderful. That could mean that you are and you're in Springfield and you think, oh, that's just Springfield, Massachusetts, which is on the east coast of America, but meanwhile it's actually Springfield, Oregon, which is on the west coast of America. In other words, a 4-hour, well, I think it's 4 to 5 hour plane ride away. Yeah, so you can see what I mean is that all because something's in Springfield doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right Springfield that's around the corner. With this, you can go say, okay, this is the store group. You can only see what's in this specific region. So that is the idea over here. That doesn't mean that they end up going and herring across the country, trying to go find out, oh no, it's in Salisbury. Yes, which Salisbury are we talking about? So that's to go make sure that they're in the nearby area as opposed to far, far, far away. Okay, so that's the idea with store groups. Right, and those were actually some of the major heavy lifting bits that we needed to do. So we've got about another 25 minutes left. So let's see how far down this we can get, because once we get down this section, we've actually covered a lot to most of the setups that we really need to look at. So let's go across to, so with this, let's go, we've covered all of those. Let's go across and dive into departments, which we already did, and you saw is very, very, very simple. It's basically reporting. After that, we'll have a look at POS. Now, yeah, POS is a bit more extensive. So with POS over here, once again, kind of like the way that we divided up warehouses and stores, we've also divided up how the POS and the actual till works. The POS is effectively going and setting up how exactly we go and we get this in this. The POS effectively over here is set up in such a way that we effectively control the actual devices. We control where things are sold from. We can, as you'll see, which payment processes, how the basic hardware works. This doesn't actually have that much to do with how the user operates it. And there are some things, for instance, retail profile is over here, and that will affect how the user operates it. But, for instance, it doesn't contain how much the float is. It doesn't contain which users can use it. That we're going to be set up when we get down to the tills, which will hopefully be tomorrow. Over here, let's go and actually continue through. So I can set my POS type, PC-based or mobile POS-based, and we'll have a look at the mobile POS in a minute. Which store it's associated at. Yes, guys, just to be clear, you can't have a floating point of sale. So I can't have a point of sale that one day it goes to store 1, and one day it's at store 1, and then the next day, oh no, somehow it went across to store 2, but then the day after, oh no, it went back to store 1. No. That is just a guarantee of things going wrong. So short answer is no. Long answer is no. So yeah, a POS is associated with a specific store. Default sale location, and like I mentioned earlier, you can have, say, a specific location that something is sold from. So for instance, electronics. Electronics are in one of these mega stores, you might have an electronics section. That means that they are only going to sell stuff from the electronics section. Or, well, they should primarily pull the stock from the electronics section. Same over here, sales refund location. And I've discussed refunds before. You want a sales refund location because if something needs a refund, then it needs to go to that location and be refunded. Right? You don't want to, it needs to be tested to go find out if there's something wrong with it. Trust me, I've got stories about this stuff because, oh no, somebody bought it back and it was actually broken, but they asked for a refund and the guy didn't check it and they gave him back his money. And then what actually happened was, somebody took it and said, oh, here's this iPhone, and sold it on to somebody else. And meanwhile, what had actually happened is they sold on a broken unit. Yeah. Tiers. So this way you can say refund stock goes to refund location and then it needs to be manually checked and transferred. Default fulfillment location, when we deal with fulfillments, we'll come back to this, which is your site ID, which is associated with your point of sale. Is it offline enabled or not? If it is offline enabled, that we were talking about a day or two ago, I think, that's when you can still start processing even if your LAN is down. That is available in iVend, and once it reconnects, everything updates across. Okay. What is your retail profile? We've discussed. Hardware profile we'll get to a little bit further down, so we'll deal with that. Or maybe not today, but maybe a bit later. Hardware ID. Yeah, guys, your hardware ID over here, please be aware, this is how the license is assigned. Okay, so if I want to take, so let's say the POS burst into flame for whatever reason. Somebody spilled a drink on it. Would love to know what that drink was, because burst into flame, that's, yeah. Anyway, but let's say it burst into flame and now that POS is no longer being used. This hardware ID is effectively tied to that point of sale. Okay, but you go and you load up the POS, you set it all up, and now you want to connect it through. Now you want to disconnect the POS, this POS license from the old POS and connect it to the new one. You hit the X button over here, and when you log in to the POS over here, it will ask you, please connect through the license. You do that, the new hardware ID, I'm going to cancel this because otherwise we're going to have trouble. The new hardware ID will appear there, and then the license will be assigned. So please be aware of that. That is where you effectively assign the POS license to that specific device. Print profile, yeah, the print profiles we'll deal with a little bit later. That's exactly how things print out. Departments, yes, we've been into the deep inner mysteries of those ones. Then beyond that, is it enabled or is it disabled? Yeah, there may be a case, guys, there will be cases where people have got more tills for, say, your festive seasons out here, like, for instance, Christmas, Easter, New Year, or various other ones. I am aware that that shopping seasons change. I know, for instance, Middle East, where I've also dealt a bit. Then you're also looking at things like Eid and Ramadan, where there's where over those periods at night you get masses of people flocking in to actually go buy stuff. So you want more people there to sell more stuff. Whereas in normal quiet periods, you might just go say, okay, well, we don't need these tills, these POS available. Payment processor unique identifier this is generally required and will be provided to you by the payment gateway you're using. Most payment gateways these days want to know this transaction happened at this till, at this time, at this place, at this store. So this is the way we go and we connect to say this device using this payment processor identifier did this transaction this time at this place at this store at this till. You show the customer display or not? Okay, so that's over there. Then just a small difference with the mobile point of sale, because it's mobile and it's different. And it is. There are actually major differences. There are some differences that are here. POS type mobile, right there, what's the site ID? You'll see my hardware ID is slightly different. But it's also, and the nice thing is over here, it also has its own default sales refund and fulfillment location. Now, I did mention you don't have wandering points of sale, so points of sale that just sort of wander around from one store to another. But what you might have is points of sale that are associated with the store, but are maybe today they're out being used somewhere else. And this might be for things like pop-up shops, which are pop-up shops, farmers markets, kiosks at malls. There's a number of places. Heck with it. I've even had with Vodafone, what they did is they had what they termed a virtual store, which they called street sales. And they had tuk-tuks driving around with they had tuk-tuks driving around with a point of sale. And the point of sale would go and you could buy airtime off the tuk-tuk. So that's the kind of thing you can do with these mobile operations. There we go. Okay, so we're back to here. There's site ID, and because these mobile operations, because they're out and about, you can actually go say that the tuk-tuk would be location 1. Or the location could be tuk-tuk 1, as the case might be. That way you can go say you will know exactly how much stock is in which location. Print profile associated department, is it enabled or not? API token, which is something that is actually generated when you connect through. Data source type, where is the data coming from? Is it coming from the enterprise or is it coming from the store? Because this greenfield store is effectively the enterprise, because I'm running in mixed mode, that does mean that data source type is enterprise, otherwise data source type would be store. And there's the different payment processes you might be using with it. Okay, now, the cool thing I want to show you about this is that if you've done all your setups right and you want to initially go and set up the POS, mobile POS, when you've done your setups, it would look like this. It wouldn't have the hardware ID. You can do all your setups in the rest of the system, then come across here and go scan configuration, and it will give you a QR code. With the QR code, you can scan that in, and it will go say, ha-ha, okay, all right, that must mean that this is the IP address, this is the port I use, this is the numbering series, this is all the stuff I do, and then it will connect. It makes it much easier to go type in things like IP, much easier to just put things in as opposed to having to go type in URLs and IP addresses and all the rest of it. Trust me, I've had to type in the IP addresses, and it's a pain. Typically on these mobile devices, specifically things like, well, Android and Apple, both of them I've had issues with, because I can tell you what right now, they don't go, they're not designed to go and easily type in things like IP addresses, or go and type in things like long URLs. So just be aware of that. So trust me, this QR code, it's a godsend. Right. So those are the POS. I also mentioned that you need to go and set up management console instances for each management console, because that's what's connected to each store. But this is where you do it under management console. You go and you create your, once again, which stores it associated with, which hardware, machine ID. So the machine ID is actually pulled through here on the management console setup. And you can also say, does it have a license or not? If it does have a license, check it. If it doesn't have a license, uncheck it. Simple stuff. Okay, and once again, this is another way that you can control who can access what management console at what point at what time. Even if as a user, I have a license for a management console, right? If that management console does not have a management console instance assigned to it, I will not be able to log in at that management console. Okay. Yeah, guys, I'm just going to, there are some things I am going to skip here that we're going to come back to tomorrow, because I'm going to end in about another 10 minutes, if everyone's okay with that. But we'll just try to go sort of look at the smaller bits and pieces here, the stuff that pops up. Okay, so for instance, things like reason codes. Here we go. You can create your own reason codes. I mentioned these earlier, that you can use these in things like cash-ins and cash-outs, and various other places. You saw where they're used in the retail profile. You can go say what the description is, what your type is, and there's actually a fair number of types that you've got. You can go everything from cash in, cash out, shutdown terminal, open, edit time clock. You know, there's a number of places you can actually go put these in, including places like purchase orders. Let me see that was reason codes. Then we'll have a look at sales attributes. Sales attributes and payment processes. I think will be and events. You can do those. Okay. All right. So just to go and have a look at sales attributes. Sales attributes over here, like I mentioned, these are like optional fields or user-defined fields that you can set in iVend for a specific, at a specific place. I actually think I have some, there we go. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. Now this is a very simple one. Do you have a loyalty card, yes or no? And the entire idea of this one was to go say, was to just go and remind the cashier, ask for a loyalty card. Because a lot of cashiers don't remember, ask for a loyalty card. Oh yeah, I don't know these things. Where does it appear in sequence? Does it appear at the top of the screen? Does it appear at the top of the area or not? In fact, I think we can go and make it active and visible. And we'll just click OK, and then hopefully that will pop up. I'll check. I might need to restart my point of sale for that to work. But while we're waiting for it to go and just process through, where do you, yep, edit. So where's your capture type, beginning or end of sale? What validation type? You get different validation types that you get here. Is it valid values or not? In fact, we'll have a look at different ones in a minute. Is there a default value? Is there a regex pattern associated with the value if they need to go put something in? What table name is associated with it? Is it integrated, and what is the integrated field name? There is more information on this online if you want to go and have a look at that. I'm not trying to dive too deep into it because we've got a lot of other stuff to do. Is it active? Is it visible? What is it applicable on? Sales, refunds, exchanges, layaways, all the rest of it, all the way down to deliveries. What are your values? So you can have multiple values over there. You know, yes, no, maybe, I'm not sure. What's the question again? What's my name again? What's my name again? So you can go put that over. You can put that over there as options. If I go to new, the different types of validation that you get, is it from a table that they're validating from? Is it from valid values? Is it from a customer or a product? So there's a couple of things that they can validate against. Now, if I have a look over here at my sale, let's see if this has actually worked. I go sale edit, I go collect attributes. I'm probably going to need to restart this for it to go and actually pick up. Yeah, there are some things that you change and it does not require a restart, and there are some things that you change that it does require a restart. This one requires a restart. And yes, a full restart, not a shut, not just a log off and log on again. Typically, my recommendation is don't do log off, log on. If you're in doubt, just shut down, open it again. I know it takes a minute or two, but it's just better. Well, you're guaranteed to have it work this way. Okay, so I've got this over here. I've got a couple of databases I have for multi-tenancy. I'm going to select the one I'm using. Click OK. Okay, so I'm just going to log in. And there you go, there's my keyboard as well. There's the user messages section where I can put in my messages, which I mentioned yesterday. Yes. Okay, there's my customer display. Okay, so I come over here and cell edit, attributes, and there you go, you see it pops up. It's got this over here as what I want my sales attribute to be. So I can set this over here if that's what I want. I can also force it to be captured, or I can force it to pop up as well. There are options for that in the system. Now, it's very nice having this. I'm sorry, I'm just going to deactivate it because otherwise it's going to drive me nuts. Okay. You can also have it for transaction item attributes. Now, transaction item attributes are similar to what we saw for the sales attributes, except these are actually focused on the item edit area. So these are supposed to focus on the specific items. Okay, they would be associated with this section of it, as opposed to the other one, which is associated with the sales edit, with the general overall sales section of it. But it's much the same thing with default values and regex patterns and valid values for tables and all the rest of it. It works pretty much the same way, just on an item level as opposed to a header level. Right, so, okay, so we've done pretty well, guys. I've just got one or two last things to go and show you, and that is I want to do poll display, and yeah, I think we'll do poll display and events, and then we'll be done for today. New. Okay, so this is where you can, remember you can set your poll display messages. This is where you can set what the message is. So is it a message? Is it a blinking message or not? So what is the message? So welcome to the store, whatever it might be. So top line would say welcome to the store, bottom line would say bye, bye, bye. Is it blinking? Does it blink or not? What is the text alignment? Is it left? Is it centered? Is it center, right? Whatever it might be, you can set that there. Which column it starts at. So you can set those over there to go and pop up on your poll display. Right, next one is just, next one I want to look at just to knock it on the head is events, and then we'll call it a day. Yeah, thank you very much, guys, for bearing with me as we take slightly longer, as we had a slight shift in where exactly, a slight shift in times, but tomorrow we're same place, same time. So over here for events, I can essentially say essentially an event is going to be a, for instance, I just want to go track something. So what were the sales like at what store at what time? So one, and this might be store birthday, right? Start date, end date, start time, end time, and I can also say which stores it's applicable to. Fairly simple and straightforward stuff. Okay, all right. Yeah, no problem. No problem, Mohammed. All right. Okay, guys, I think I'm going to go and say that that is a good spot for us to just call it a day. There is still quite a bit that we need to finish, which is this stuff over here. Fortunately, the big chunks of settings are done. I mean, even after retail, it's human resources, authorization, IT administration, which are relatively straightforward and quick. We should have those done basically in half an hour. Then we'll have a look at the operations. And to be honest, if you're familiar with ERP, if you're familiar with other systems like this, it's very straightforward. The settings are always the bit that everyone trips up on. Once you know the settings, then it's easy to go set up the rest of it. So I'd just like to leave these last couple of moments for questions. If there are any questions, if anyone has something that we haven't maybe covered yet, or even if there's just something you want to know, hey Keith, are we going to cover this later, or I thought this was meant to be at this point and we didn't quite cover it, let me know. You know, there's I try to keep track of everything on. Yeah, Armand, I have followed up with them about it. Apparently, they say there's a change in the way that GoToWebinar is processing these things, and they have issues getting it. I'm trying to access it from my side. I will try to go see if I can go set up a Google Drive that we can maybe get it from. That might be quicker than certainly them trying to go sort it out the other side. But the problem is I need to get the actual processed recording, and that's proving to be the problem. Okay. All right, guys. What else is there? Okay. Yeah, once again, I do want to point out that these sessions over here are not meant to be complete training sessions. After this, it's not like you can go, aha, I will go off and I will write the exam. You could, and I would hope that you pass. But my suggestion is that in conjunction with this, in conjunction with these, with what I'm showing you here, that you would go and have a look at, do the videos online, do the, go through the CKP, have a look at what's there. And please remember, when you write the exam, it's an open book exam. It's designed as an open book exam, which means we expect you to have Management Console open. We expect you to have Point of Sale open. If you don't have Management Console open and you don't have Point of Sale open, you will probably fail, because specifically, there's going to be times you go, oh, hang on, wait, where is the payment processor? Not that that's a question. Though actually, seeing you guys are sitting here waiting so kindly and nicely, I will give you a small hint. And this is, once again, entirely a reason to install iVend on your machines. Is in the help, there are numerous places where there are answers to questions. Right. One of them in particular is over here in my print profile. Okay. It will go, and it specifically asks the question is asked in a roundabout way. That's the other thing I do want to point out is read the questions. Don't skim read the questions. Read the questions, and then read the question again. Because sometimes you read the question and you think, oh, it's blah, and then you actually read and think, oh, hang on, wait a minute, what are they actually talking about? The great advantage about reading the question and also search, remember you have a search over here in the help, which is very helpful. Not to put too fine a point in it, but the other thing about it is that with the search, you can specifically find areas that people are looking at or for. One of the things that does come up is how many copies of something can be printed, and the valid values for the number of copies are 1 to 99. So there you go. That is the answer to the question. As some of you guys who've already written will know that. Any material to study for exams? Yeah, pretty much what I've mentioned. Make sure you have your make sure you have your demo stack downloaded and set up. With the demo stack, it actually comes with, where is it now? I do not. Here we go. There we go. I have a demo stack. It actually comes with a couple of things like demo stack configuration data. It's a PDF along with demo stack demo script and demo stack prerequisites. Go over those. Just run through a couple of the examples they give you, just to help familiarize yourself with the actual setups. Because the second you familiarize yourself, you go, oh, then it's far more easier to do. And trust me, I know what these webinars are like. You're sitting here listening to my voice for 2 hours while you're probably actually doing email in the background. I know how this goes, guys. I've run plenty of these things. And at the end of it, you're like, oh, yes, I've been through the training. Oh, now I have to write the exam. Oh. Okay. Do yourself a favor. Go and go install the demo stack. Run through the demo sessions. Then you will have a much better idea about what I'm talking about for all these things. Trust me, it's just so much more real. Normally, if this is my normal classroom training, I make you guys install the demo stack or get this demo stack sorted out on the first day, because the difference between passing and failing is generally, do you have the demo stack installed? The exam, we do not have a specific date for the exam. Next question I've got is, when is the exam? We do not have a specific date for the exam. I don't do the exam at the end of these webinars. One very simple reason for that is we don't have enough time. Really, 2 hours a day to cover the entire of iVend. You can see where we are at the moment. We've still got another 2 days left, and I'm looking at the amount of stuff I've got left, and we've still got a bucket load of stuff to do. I don't know if we can cover it in 2 days. Normally, even if I have to go cover it in a week, then we can make a plan. We can, at the end of a week's training, when I've got you for 8 hours a day staring at the screen, we can do it. But not after 5 2-hour sessions a day. Doesn't work. I would suggest trying to write the exam on your own. There's nothing stopping you from writing the exam on your own at the end of the week. If you want to do it, then feel free. Okay. With that, guys, I'm going to say thank you very much. Thank you very much that we could start a bit later today. Yep, I'm glad that you guys were. I'm glad you guys were all here. We will start normal time tomorrow and continue on and finish at the normal time tomorrow. So back to normal, or normality, all those normal things that normal people do. So we will do that, and I will see you guys then. Have a good one, and chat soon. Yeah, Vanessa, if you do need help to set up the demo stack, contact me on Skype. We will sort it out. We can sort it out there. Bye.